Hello, my name is Sharon Mercedes, and I'm working with Esther, Matt, and Maggie to do sampling, design, and bias. Our main overarching goal of sampling is to get a random and representative sample. Our first form of random sampling is our simple random sample, and that is where every person of a population has an equal chance to be chosen, and that'll give us our group, or N. And how do you choose an SRS? Well, you need to label, and then you need to randomize. Our second form of random sampling is the stratified random sample, and that is classifying your population into strata. And an example of stratified random sampling would be if you are a lawyer and you have your list of clients and you separate them into ethnicity, such as one group is Caucasian, African American, and Hispanic American. Each of those classifications are your strata, and each person inside of that has an equal chance of being chosen for your sample. A strata is a non-overlapping subgroup within a population, and an SRS in each is a stratum. Our third form of random sampling is our cluster sample. That is classifying our population into clusters. Clusters are chosen as groups of individuals that are located near each other, and SRS of all the clusters of the individuals in a cluster are included in the sample. Here's are some pros and cons between the cluster versus the strata. A pro of using a cluster sample is that it saves time and money, but the con is that it's less representative of the population. As, for example, if you're saying you wanted to take polling results of an entire state, a cluster sample would only represent people that are near each other there, who would probably vote differently than people maybe way down in the south of your state. A strata is more representative of the population because it's a random sample of each strata, and it just takes a longer amount of time to finish. One form of bad sampling is the convenience sample, which is choosing individuals in the population who are easy to reach. For example, if you wanted to know the percentage of people that attend high school sporting events, but you were asking outside of your high school, then that would lead to a convenience sample because people in your high school are more likely to go to high school sporting events. Another form of bad sampling is voluntary response sample, and that is where people voluntarily choose themselves to respond. So if you were, for example, holding a booth asking if people would like an increase in wages or minimum wage, people who work are more likely to respond than people who do not have a job if you were asking at school. One form of bias is undercoverage, where some members of the population cannot be chosen in the sample, and thus they're not represented in the sample, so possibly your sample is not fully representing the actual population in undercoverage. The second form of bias is non-response, and this is where individuals for chosen cannot be contacted or participate. So if a report is asking about people's preferences for food to eat, whether they eat in or out, but they call during work time when people are at work, people at home are more likely to say that they maybe eat at home, since people at work who cannot answer probably are eating out. A third form of bias is the response bias, and that's where gender, age, race, ethnicity, and behavior of the interviewer could affect responses. This is a systematic pattern of inaccurate answers that leads to a response bias. The fourth form of bias is wording of the questions. That's where changing in wording can greatly affect outcomes. Confusing or leading questions can skew the data in one way or another. An example of this would be to ask people if you recycle or not in one way, and then another way to ask them if they recycle would be, if you knew that every hour 10,000 trees die if you do not recycle, would you recycle or not? So a biased question like that can lead to bias. And that is all. Thank you for watching.